The Catchmoon chamber has the highest base damage out of the Kitgun chambers from Fortuna. It fires a projectile with innate enemy punch through, similar to the Akka Plasmor, which deals impact and heat damage, with a guaranteed impact proc to enemies within 10 meters. The projectile itself has travel time, damage falloff and limited range, so I usually use it close range. The projectile receives no bonus damage from headshots, since you only need to aim slightly higher than the enemy's waist to hit their head. It will still trigger headshot effects from Arcanes like Pax Seeker and mods like Hydraulic Crosshairs. The Catchmoon Secondary has a semi-automatic trigger and fires a wide beam. The damage and fire rate will depend on the grip type. You will get the highest damage if you use the Haymaker, but the fire rate will be low. I personally don't mind the low fire rate, so I use the Haymaker in both builds I will show you. The loader will determine your gun's magazine size, reload speed, critical chance, critical multiplier and status chance. I recommend using either a Tier 3 or Tier 4 loader. You can get the highest critical chance of 35% and critical multiplier of 2.3 times if you use the Killstream or the Splat. The Killstream has a lower magazine size, but faster reload. It's the loader I use in most of my Kitgun builds. This first configuration is more beginner-friendly. I made it before I was rank 3 with Solaris United and used it for quite a bit before making another Kitgun. It uses the Slapneedle loader with stats that are similar to the Stitch, but with a smaller magazine size. This build doesn't use primed mods. Jolt and Pistol Pestilence are the hardest to get, but you could use Convulsion and Pathogen rounds. It will just require 2 more formas. I also put Gunslinger here to increase the fire rate. This won't do too well against high-level heavily armored enemies, but it will obliterate any lower-level enemies. It's not meant for the steel path, but it will get you through the star chart. The configuration I'd recommend for the Catchmoon Secondary Kitgun uses the Haymaker grip and Killstream loader. It has a higher critical chance and critical multiplier than my previous Kitgun. This first build uses 3 primed mods and Magnum Force, so it could be expensive if you don't already have those mods. You could use Pathogen rounds and Convulsion, but it would require 2 more formas. Heat and corrosive damage will both do armor stripping, so having a bit more status chance isn't too much of a waste. This build deals tons of damage and does well even against steel path enemies. My second build replaces Magnum Force with Hydraulic Crosshairs. Since it's really easy to get headshots with the projectile, it will be active most of the time and give you some orange crits. Hollow Point is here to further increase critical damage. This build will also require 1 less forma than the previous one. On its own, this build doesn't do as well as the first one, but it depends on what arcanes you use. I usually use the Pax Charge Arcane, but if you want to increase your damage output, you might want to use Pax Seeker. On a headshot kill, it will shoot out 4 projectiles that will headshot other enemies. This won't do too much damage to heavily armored enemies, but can one-shot infested enemies. For Warframe Arcanes, consider using Arcane Velocity to increase your fire rate. I will show you my second build with Arcane Avenger, that increases critical chance, and Arcane Precision, that increases pistol damage after a headshot. This setup will be able to handle even heavily armored enemies. The Catchmoon Primary has lower base damage than the secondary and a smaller projectile, but it is a fully automatic shotgun. The lower damage might be disappointing at first, but this is a very fun weapon to play with. Depending on what grip you use, you can have more damage or more fire rate. Brash will give you the highest fire rate at the cost of damage, and Tremor will give you highest damage with the lowest fire rate. I will show you builds using both grips. The Stitch Loader will give you the biggest magazine, but the reload speed is going to be extremely slow. I recommend using either Killstream or Splat, for the highest critical chance and damage. My first primary configuration uses the Tremor Grip and Killstream Loader. It has the highest possible base damage, critical chance and critical damage. My build uses 3 prime shotgun mods. If you don't have them, you can use the regular versions and save yourself a forma or 2. I recommend putting 4 V polarities and 1 dash polarity since it will give you more build variability. This build doesn't do terribly well against level 160 heavy gunners, but it will obliterate non-armored enemies. Enemy punch through works better if you have a way of grouping the enemies. I'm using Exodia Hunt on my ZA to show this off. The magazine might be quite small, but the reload is fast, especially if you use Pax Charge. You could use Arcane Acceleration to increase the fire rate. Instead of Vigilante Armaments, you could use Laser Sight, which will give you more critical chance after a headshot. If you want more fire rate, you can use the Brash Grip. I have combined it with the Stitch Loader for more magazine capacity. This configuration will have a lower base damage, reload speed, critical chance and damage than the previous one. This is the same build as on the previous Kitgun, for comparison. Instead of Vigilante Armaments, you could use Shotgun Spaz for more fire rate, Ammo Stock to increase your magazine size to 21 or Laser Sight for more critical chance. Since this is an automatic weapon with a higher fire rate, I will show you how it works with a viral and slash build. I have Frigid Blast and Contagious Spread for viral damage, and Hunter Munitions to inflict slash procs on critical hits. This build works better if you group enemies and hit multiple with one shot. Armored enemies will die eventually from the slash procs, but it doesn't work as well as with other weapons. And the first build is more fun in my opinion. You can use the Pax Seeker Arcane on this one too, but I prefer having Pax Charge so I don't need to reload. On your Warframe, you could use Arcane Rage, which will give you 15% chance for plus 180% damage after a headshot, but I don't have it. It isn't as effective as Arcane Precision, so I didn't think it was worth picking up. I will show you how well this build does with Arcane Avenger and Arcane Acceleration. To get the absolute most out of this weapon, you can put the Vigilante mods on your Sentinel weapon. This will apply the Vigilante set bonus to your primary weapon as well. If you use it together with Arcane Avenger and Laser Sight, you can get occasional red crits. The Catchmoon Secondary is still one of the strongest secondary weapons in the game. It will perform well even against Steel Path enemies. The primary might not be as powerful, but it is still fun to play in normal missions.